Welcome to our latest edition of CharitEpulse, our bi-weekly charity podcast. My name is Charles Mosquita, Charities Director at Quilt Achievement Investment Management. I'm delighted to be joined by my regular musketeers, Catherine Ross-John Domji, leading charity legal beagle at Shakespeare Martineau, and James Saunders, charity partner at leading accountancy and audit firm Moore Kingston Smith. Together, we explore the latest pressing issues affecting the not-for-profit and voluntary organisations. Don't forget, you can catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and on our various websites. We would love to have feedback, so please send us comments and questions. Well, you would have thought we would have a quiet summer. We've still got the US-Iran tensions dominating global news and oil above £100. And if you filled up your car lately, you would have noticed that. We've got humanitarian situations both in Gaza and Syria, and Ukraine has been in the headlines following cabinet and defense leadership changes. And there's been trade tension, surprise, surprise, between the US and Canada, US and Europe. And we've had a lot of fires seem to be breaking out in various parts of the world because of the ongoing heat wave that we all seem to be. And one for you, James. We've had the World Cup and Spain were the worthy winners. I can't say that I actually watched a match. But anyway, so according to my sons, it was a very exciting contest, particularly some of the English games. And we've also got a new Prime Minister in Mr. Burnham and a cabinet reshuffle. However, we haven't had a reshuffle as far as the charity sector is concerned, because Lisa Nandy remains in post as Minister for Department of Culture, Media and Sport, and we've got Stephanie Peacock remains in the role of Minister for Civil Society, and Dan Tomlinson, I didn't know we actually had, remains the Charity Tax Minister. Who shall I come to first? James, any views and thoughts on this?
No, it's pretty much stay as was, isn't it? With the people responsible for and involved in the governance of the charity sector and the ministerial departments. So just keep going. Hope obviously they were supportive enough of the new Prime Minister that they've managed to keep their jobs. I think it is changing, isn't it? The DCMS. It's going to be digital culture, media, and DC. It's going to change to something else, isn't it?
Catherine, are you?
I thought it was good that she's staying. I suppose is the main one, Stephanie Peacock and Lisa Nandy, I suppose. I think people do get concerned that if you keep shoving it to somebody new, then they've got to get to know the sector again, and there's all that kind of reading in time. Whereas it seems quite positive in terms of what Lisa Nandy and Stephanie Peacock have been achieving in their roles to date. I was similar though; I didn't know we had Dan Tomlinson. So yeah, charity tax minister. Did not know we had a charity tax minister, but I suppose does make sense in terms of looking at gift aid and that's a huge amount of money that's involved there. So yes, it makes sense. But I suppose he's not just quite as prominent perhaps in reporting and various updates that we see.
Yeah, I suspect it's quite important to have somebody in the Treasury, isn't it, who sits and understands exactly how the tax situation in for charities work. Is it because they're moving, aren't they? From the Cabinet Office to DCMS or whatever it's going to be called.
Well, I think it's DSIT. The Department for Science, Innovation, Technology is being closed, and various bits are going to different places. So there were some stories about, particularly the scientific community are not very keen on being shunted into various. And I think that DCMS is getting another D. I think it's getting digital as well, isn't it?
I
And
think
it's
it is.
Without their
getting, yeah.
DCMS, I think.
And
And
also the
also
Office for Impact Economy. Is that what you're going to say, Todd? Yeah.
that's exactly what I was going to say,
Yeah.
and maybe we might cover that on another podcast, because I think it's quite interesting what's going and the emphasis of that. But the other thing I thought was quite interesting, just around announcements, was Andy Burnham's first pledge was to end rough sleeping in England.
Very
So,
worthy. Yeah, excellent.
yeah, well, but it just England rather than the UK. But I'm sure that was Well, I don't know whether that was.
No, it's probably a devolved matter, isn't it? I would imagine.
I suspect it probably is. So, moving on, but staying with Parliament, and I think this was one. I'm not sure whether James or Catherine, you spotted it, but the Commission has been held in contempt of Parliament over a row with the Ombudsman. So the controversy stems from the Charity Commission's attempt in 2025 to stop the Parliament and Health Service Ombudsman, formerly the Parliamentary Commissioner for Administration, or PCA, for laying two highly critical reports before Parliament. And this was to do with concerns about how the Commission had handled two safeguarding and abuse-related complaints involving charities. I think one was for a children's charity and the other one was a complaint against a trustee. Catherine, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, we did touch on it, didn't we, previously? I just think, again, it is not a great look for the Commission. I see, the recently appointed chair, Dame Julia Unwin, very much trying to get in front of this, saying it was a mistake on their part. They apologise unreservedly. The reports are there that, there have been private apologies made as well. But, I think the articles are quite damning, in terms of the stance that the Commission took was not appropriate, was not an argument they should have been running with. The Chief Executive of the Charity Commission, David Holdsworth, he is named specifically and has said he should apologise to Parliament for repeatedly saying that the Commission's legal action was not intended to quash the laying of the reports when that was precisely its purpose. And throughout, I was honestly just reading this saying, I've advised charities that have been criticised by the Commission for, as they would see it, being aggressive, being non-cooperative, not explaining what they're doing, not seeking to take people with them. Why are you not cooperating? And then for the Commission to take this stance, I think, well, it's a bit rich as far as I'm concerned, in terms of you wouldn't accept this from a charity if it was a charity disputing the authority of Parliament or saying to the Commission, you've exceeded your powers. That can be very hard coming down on those charities. So I thought, well, here it is not a great look for them. I mean, I did feel for the two individuals, the two whistleblowers, and you think, well, this is how it's all come to light. I mean, they did call for the full removal, I think, of the board and its chief executive, which, I appreciate they're in obviously a very difficult position, but I didn't think that was necessarily a realistic hope. But it shows you the depth of feeling, doesn't it, in terms of what the Commission have done?
James?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a disaster. I think for the Charity Commission, the one of the people bringing the grievance and has already, as well as saying that the board should resign. There's also been claims, the Charity Commission is not fit for purpose. That phrase comes out again, and it's difficult to argue with the sense of feeling and the sense of injustice here. The Charity Commission has clearly made a real rickets of this. Apologies straight away. It's difficult to see how really anyone comes out of this, or the Charity Commission goes on unscathed here, given seems to be some untruths in what's been going on here. So it is a real problem, and one that is not solved by, as Catherine says, the chair coming out and apologising. That I don't think that'll close this off, because it's one of those things that, because it's safeguarding, because it's all that sort of thing. It's a very serious matter that they got very seriously wrong.
Yeah, I think it's always. I worry that, and this is a more general point. Obviously, I don't know the individual cases concerned about, off with their head, everybody must resign and everything else, because otherwise that means people won't make mistakes, or will be fearful of making mistakes, and you then don't learn from them. I thought what was really interesting in the report is that the Privilege Committee report reveals that the Speaker's Council, you learn lots of new things about Parliament, which provides legal advice to the House of Commons, wrote to the Commission warning that its judicial review claim could give rise to issues of contempt of Parliament, suggesting that it withdrew the action. So, I mean, I think that was pretty telling from obviously the Parliament's sort of top lawyer. I thought the other thing that was interesting that they have actually done, which is more sort of constructive, is the regulator has commissioned, so the Charity Commission has commissioned an independent review led by the judge, Sir Gary Hickinbottom, who has begun his investigation. So they're obviously, taking action, and whether we'll ever see the the report and what the findings are and the implementation of that, but at least having had their knuckles rapped and apologized unreservedly, action is being taken. The next thing I spotted was around freedom for torture, and the Helen Bamber Foundation won a High Court case, and this was around treated as a significant case because it has become an early test of the principles that underpin the UK government's proposed civil society covenant. Catherine, shall I come to you again as it being a legal case? I don't know, give a bit of backstory to it.
Yeah, I mean, it is exceptional, I suppose, even just to begin with, the fact that there was a High Court case. I mean, it is highly unusual. That will not have been an easy task. It will have had costs for them to be able to pursue that and bring that to the High Court. And they were successful. So they've had a victory in the High Court, which was the case centred around the Home Office was found to have acted unlawfully in February 2024 when it removed long-standing protections for survivors of torture, trafficking and other serious forms of violence from its asylum accommodation policy. And it further found the government should have consulted these two charities, Helen Bamber Foundation and Freedom from Torture, before making those significant changes, and it failed to properly consider the impact on those people that it would affect. So, I think it was interesting, wasn't it? Because we saw this, that for more than 2 decades, those two charities worked constructively with successive governments to improve policy. So here we have charities working hand in hand with government, trying to address what is a very difficult but clearly important area. But that did not extend to them being consulted about such a wide-reaching change to the policy that was being sought to be made. And I think some of the headlines, one of them is that our High Court victory shows the civil society covenant must be more than words. And I suppose whether there is this link to the covenant itself, because this comes back to a decision in February 2024, but also I just think in general how charities work with government and whether they are seen as an equal partner and treated with that respect that an equal partnership should hold, or whether it does require them to take legal action from time to time. But we've also seen charities being criticised for, seemingly biting the hand that feeds you if they don't like changes the government are making.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that, but I would also say in February 2024, there was a government in place that was coming to the very sad end, a curtailment of a long period of declining time in power. It was, I would imagine at that point, no one knew what they were doing. Everything had been disastrous. And frankly, I think the government had run out of steam. So I would imagine there's an element of that in that Home Office acting unlawfully in February 2024. Yeah, and I think, as Catherine said, a long-standing agreement to work together and hand in glove, if you like, it just seems to have run out of steam toward at that point, which is a shame, and absolutely right that these two organisations should highlight that the government at that point on that matter failed, and the Home Office acted unlawfully, and we should learn from it. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's hope government takes it on board of the value of seeking charitable advice and the knowledge and expertise the sector has to offer. So the next thing I spotted was that UK charities are spending 12 million hours each year on banking, equivalent to 6,000 people working full-time all year round. Now, this is a report produced by the Charity Finance Group, and this is their 3rd report that they have been published. James, as we're on finances, I think I'll let you have a start.
I mean, I don't think it's telling us anything we don't know already. It might be putting some numbers to support it. Banking is a challenge for charities for all sorts of reasons. Overseas trustees we know about being blackballed by banks who don't understand and can't get round anti-money laundering checks and all that sort of thing. This one also says issues apparently for rural charities, okay, because you can't get to a branch in banking, in-person banking services not available. They're all very difficult things. Like I said, I don't think there's anything new in here, but it does add some numbers to the pressures that associate with banking. And it is, we've all had experience of charities who are struggling with banking, possibly have been debanked as one well-known politician has highlighted in the last couple of years. It's an ongoing problem, and the commitment to sort it out. Well, I'd like to see it start.
Catherine?
Absolutely. I mean, it is, it's a growing problem. I think it's worthwhile that CFG are monitoring it and continuing to compare, responses in the latest survey to the two that have gone previously. And they had highlighted in this latest survey that access to local banking services is now one of the fastest growing concerns raised by respondents. So they are seeing real issues around this. Some of the issues they talked about was around bank mandates, trustee verification, and charity specific knowledge appear to be improving. Now, whether that's trustees working out how to speak the language of the banks and give them what they need, or whether that's banks in turn understanding how charities operate slightly better. But I suppose all in all, it was highlighting that trustees serve on a voluntary basis. So if you are using people's time to deal with banking administration, then that is not what they signed up for. And it's time that's taken away from focusing on the charity's activities, isn't it? But I think it's good that CFG are shining a light on this and people have the ability to share their findings. And so banks in turn, are being held to account. And it is something the Charity Commission are keeping a watching brief on.
I have to say, I'm quite surprised about some of the challenges that get a high percentage of scoring, if you like. Fees for banking services, the limited access to in-person banking, recorded as some of the highest scoring challenges. And I wonder if this reflects the people who are actually completing these surveys, because the biggest challenge is a cyber attack. I mean, that's got to be the biggest the biggest challenge for anyone with it's not the admin side. I know this is a focus on admin, but really
Well,
the biggest threat is around a hack or something like what happened to one of the banks in the last year, which was a complete month-long failure to be able to access banking, which means payroll doesn't get done, security falls away, admin, just day-to-day banking can't be done. That is the real big disaster.
but I think the problem is, and this is as much to do with personal banking than anything else, is that we all think we're getting free banking, and there's no such thing. So the banks are making money out of us in different ways.
Yeah.
And the problem is that doesn't translate into when you're a private individual become a trustee and you're looking at your charity banking and suddenly you're being charged. You're going, oh, we're being ripped off. And I think you have to start from the point about actually what is a fair rate of being to be charged for a service that's being provided, and have some transparency around it. And the way that it's worked out at the moment, I just don't think that ever happens. And every time I ask a banker about, okay, fine, how much should we be paying, I never get an answer of how they can. Oh, it depends on this, that, and the other. And you just go, well, hold a second. And the in-person banking, I think you're right. If you look at the average age of a trustee, I think what's that, 64 or 65, where they are predominantly more used to dealing with people. Dealing with people, the problem with the whole of this digitalization of our banking is that, of course, it becomes a commodity, and if you don't fit within their parameters, you're gonna have a problem, and then you've got nobody to talk to about how you sort that out. So yeah, I think it's very difficult, and I think it will only get worse. And the final thing I would say is that from a bank's point of view, they're looking at this from a risk return perspective, and of course the problem is the risks are so high from reputational, and if it goes wrong, and they're the ones with the deep pockets. So although I don't think their behaviour is necessarily perfect in any shape or form, and I think there is a lot of valid criticism. I think one needs to look at both sides. Now, the other thing I had spotted in my inbox was a press release from the Charity Commission urging charities to prepare for compliance with a EHRC code of practice. And I have to say, as a trustee, I was suddenly very alarmed, particularly as I didn't know what EHRC was. And of course, that's the Equality and Human Rights Commission. And I have to say, although I was vaguely aware that had law came in, I certainly didn't know how that impacted on me as a trustee. Catherine, your moment to shine to tell us all the questions you're getting from your clients.
And this is normally when I say as well, I'm not an expert in the Equality Act. This isn't my area, but and I think that is where we're all finding ourselves, is this isn't our area. But the reason it's come up in the press this week was the Charity Commission issuing a publication, an update to say, don't wait for us. The law is in place now, and charities need to work out for themselves how they're going to comply. And I did see some interesting comments on LinkedIn, so some more reasoned than others, but essentially saying, if a multi-million-pound organisation such as the Charity Commission with their own in-house legal team can't give us, information and guidance at a time that we need it, how is it realistic that charities with no resources behind them are going to be able to work this out, to apply it to their varying circumstances in which they operate? So I think it was just quite poor for the Commission to say they're reviewing their guidance. They expect to publish revised guidance in autumn 2026. So no, confirmed date. No, in the meantime, we'd suggest this, that, and the other. I think it's just leaving many charities, I think, high and dry, trying to work out what is a very emotive topic that many people will feel very strongly about, and charities want to do the right thing, but I don't think they're being helped by the Commission to do that.
I think that the Charity Commission made it even less helpful, didn't they, by saying we're not going to publish anything, but if you don't do anything, you'll be in legal hot water. You're not complying with your own with the trustees' legal responsibilities. So very, very difficult message to receive, I think, to be told you there's no guidance, but also if you're not going to follow the law, you'll be in trouble yourselves individually.
But we must have, things like schools must have been issued guidance. Local authorities must have been issued guidance. So why aren't we just sort of collating a general guidance for everybody? Why do we need
you want to cut and paste the guidance, Charles?
Well, not necessarily, but why? I don't know enough about it, clearly. But you would have thought guidance that is going to be relevant for one will be relevant for others, particularly as charities are such a diverse group.
I would have thought.
I don't know why we need it specifically for charities. Sorry, Catherine.
Yeah, but also why anybody that has a gov.uk webpage, why they can't share resources and share that we've researched this is our finding. Doesn't have to be a copy and paste, but it can be for goodness sake, you're all supposedly in this together. Why can't you share your findings? And this is our conclusion. This might help you with your considerations, and maybe that's happening, but just didn't very much sound like it to me.
Yeah, I agree. And anything that tells me that I go and take legal advice is always, again, thinking, is that good use of charitable money? No offence, Catherine, because every piece of advice that I've ever got from you has been absolutely worth its weight in gold. Now, the final subject that came up was around local authorities are once again being criticised by the Commission. If you remember, I think in August 2024, David Holsworth, Chief Executive of the Charity Commission, issued, I think it was his first regulatory alert which was a public letter to local authority chief executives after the Commission had seen a significant number of cases where councils had failed to comply with their legal duties as trustees. This appears to be a continuing problem. Catherine.
Yeah, I find it really interesting. And to give you some numbers, it is 45 local authorities who are in default. That is a lot. And what they've been doing since they had the regulatory letter from David Holdsworth, I don't know. So, some of it, I just thought the excuses didn't really hold water for me. One of them talked about most of the charity trusteeships with overdue documents dated back to the 1960s, and some have been inherited from former district councils. Well, so what? But they're yours now. Time to get on top of it. Time to contact the commission if you need documentation. It's only the expectation that every other charity and its trustees have. I don't see why local authorities should be given any sort of special treatment. And again, they've got their own in-house legal teams. So if they wanted to address this and focus on it, they could, and they're clearly choosing not to. But I think the Charity Commission are picking a fight again to say, we're coming on this. They've talked about they will have one-to-one engagement with local authorities where that's required. So I think, it's about time, because I think a lot of people are concerned when you have charitable resources managed by a local authority. Does that local authority understand the distinction between assets that it holds and manages on charitable purposes and its other assets? And are they being properly accounted for and administered? And if they're not filing the accounts, where's the transparency of that reporting to even know how those assets are being used? So I think it's valid to look into it.
James?
Yeah, absolutely. It would be very, very easy as well as further to what Catherine was saying. It'd be very, very easy for assets, for example, to be double counted, and you could quite easily see assets, properties, for example, being held in a council where it should really. In fact, this has been seen in the last couple of years with a theatre on the south coast where the assets weren't pulled out of the council properly and ended up being double counted in various places. So it is a worry. You're only getting half the story, aren't you? If you haven't got the charity's own accounts being prepared, and it does suggest that there could well be the possibility, as Catherine says, that they don't really understand the division between the two organisations or more.
Wow. Anyway, well, I'd have to say that having had a second warning, I suspect hopefully the councils are responding appropriately. Well, there we go. To say it's a quiet summer, it certainly isn't. And there's still plenty that seems to be going on and keeping our attention. Thank you, James. Thank you, Catherine, as always. To say we live in interesting times would be once again an understatement. Thank you for listening. We love to hear if you have any questions or want us to cover any particular topics, do please get in touch. Do share with friends and family. And according to my friends, this is the only podcast worth listening to.